Hello, how are you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Wales 34, Australia 39. An unbelievable comeback by the Wallabies in Cardiff to end 2022 on a high. Surely though, now Wayne Pivac, the Wales head coach, in my opinion, it is time that they move on from him. I'll explain why in this video. But if you are new here, drop a comment down below, like the video, and also subscribe to the channel. Always appreciate all of your support. But such a great game. Let's get into it. So I was actually at Twickenham yesterday, which meant I couldn't watch the Wales-Australia game properly. So I've just sat down and watched the full 80 minutes to properly watch it. And it's really interesting actually getting a perspective when you know the result of the game in terms of just how you watch it, what you see, because were still some positives for Wales, but obviously overall it will be completely overshadowed by another defeat. A game in which they were leading, they looked so comfortable. At one point you thought they were going to kick on and maybe put 50 points on Australia and win really, really comfortably, and they fell apart towards the end of the game in a similar fashion, I think, to how they fell apart against Georgia a week ago as well. So if we talk about the head coach first of all, because that's going to be the main talking point from this game, is what does it mean for Wayne Pivac? What does it mean for the future of the Wales head coach? And in my opinion, I think they do need to move on from him. And it pains me to say that. You've got to remember that it's human beings involved. It's someone losing their job. That's never nice. And rugby doesn't have a firing culture like you see in, say, football. And for the most part, that's a really positive thing. But if you think about it, if we don't have that culture at all, and if you say, well, they've hired him to do a World Cup cycle, you give him until the end of the World Cup, it kind of absolves the coach of all responsibility in terms of results in that 4-year period. And there surely needs to be a mark where once you've gone past that, questions over your job are completely fair. And in this occasion, I think we have got past that point, unfortunately, with Wayne Pivac. And as I say, I actually feel pretty gutted for him. Watching the end of the game when the camera was panning to him, just after Australia scored their final try to take the lead with about 2 minutes remaining, he looked absolutely devastated. He was a man who has been under pressure, would have been incredibly aware of the pressure he's under, and knows what that try might potentially mean in terms of him losing his job. So it's not a nice conversation to have. But if we look at the results that Wales have had this year, the defeat in the Six Nations to Italy, the defeat to Georgia last week, now this defeat where you have been leading, you're up against an Australian side who are playing their 5th international in as many weeks, have an absolute boatload of players injured. I mean, they've probably got virtually a starting 15 of top quality players that are injured that they can't select. Inexperienced side, look knackered, end of their year. You've got the lead, you've got a comfortable lead, and they let it slip. And there's so many things in the Wales game, which I'll get onto in just a minute, that I think are really, really troubling. That for me, whilst we don't have that higher fire culture in rugby, on this occasion, I think it has got to the point where, unfortunately, Pivac needs to go. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. There's going to be a lot of discussion around the head coach. He seems like a really good bloke, but it just hasn't worked with him and this Wales team. In terms of the game, I mentioned that it's really interesting watching a match when you know the result in terms of what you see. And there were some good stuff for Wales. And of course, the result overshadows most of it. But when you're looking at it in the cold light of day and you can kind of separate the two things, I think Jack Morgan this autumn has been a real positive. Scoring tries again in this game, looks brilliant with ball in hand. Pivac has always struggled to get the combination of his back row right. And I think Jack Morgan is a name that is there for the future. Whether Justin Tipuric should be there, I think is up for debate. He was made captain this autumn because of the absence of Dan Biggar. I do wonder whether we would have seen Tipuric starting every game had Biggar been there to be the captaincy. I wonder whether it felt like Tipuric had to play because he was named captain. Faletau will be the number 8, but maybe there's another spot open in that back row. So Morgan, I thought, was a real positive. Also, if you look at this game for an hour, Wales were far more efficient in the red zone than they have been for most of the autumn. A big issue this autumn, including the game against the All Blacks, including the game against Argentina, and including the game against Georgia, was they got themselves in the red zone, they got themselves in position to score, and they just weren't being particularly efficient in that area. I thought they looked a lot more efficient in attack against Australia. There have been moments when they've got ball in hand that they started to look more dangerous, but they haven't done that on a consistent basis. So that was a positive in this game, but of course, no one's going to remember that because everything kind of fell apart. And they were also physically better for about an hour of the game as well. They had the edge on the Australians in terms of the maul and the scrum, and then again, that completely changed. It completely reversed. And you felt the momentum shift when Justin Tipuric, who, as I say, is the captain, did that trip on Pete Samu, got the yellow card, and Wales just fell apart at that point. That's almost the most alarming thing for me, because it felt similar to the Georgia game, not in the way that Wales had dominated the game, particularly against Georgia, but they were in the lead, and it got to the final 20 minutes, and you could just feel it start to slip away from them, and you didn't have faith that they were going to be able to wrestle back momentum. You don't feel like it's a side that when things start going against them in that final 20 minutes that they're able to change the direction of travel in the game, and that's got to be a massive concern for Wales and for Welsh fans. And I mentioned Tipuric as the captain, just a stupid trip, a really stupid trip. It opened the door for the Australian comeback, deserved yellow card. From there, Australia go down, they score a try, they put pressure on, ends up in another yellow card as well, and they're just on the back foot. So the inability to take control of the game again, similar to what we saw against Georgia a week ago, that's a massive concern for Australia. And as I say, I feel like Wayne Pivac could well be out of a job, which is horrible. The reason he may not be is financially, if the WRU can afford to sack him as well. I don't know whether that is going to be a case. We shall wait and see. I think there'll be more on this over the next few days. But let's get on to Australia, because credit to the Wallabies. They came back, sensational comeback. They've had a really tough year, 2022. I think it's been a weird one for Australia because they've constantly been battling injuries. I've mentioned it on this channel over the last few days. I've already mentioned it in this video. They've had a lot of players missing. Michael Hooper, Taniela Tupu, Nick White, just to name a few who've gone home in the last week. They've been without Quade Cooper this year. Samu Karevi we've barely seen. There's lots and lots of players who we haven't seen much of. They've had a long injury list. They've played five internationals in a row. And I know you need money at international level, and that's part of the reason they've probably given themselves such a hectic autumn fixture list. I think it's too many. I think it was a side that were out on their feet for the most part. But factoring all those things in, huge credit for them for the way in which they came back in this match. As I say, around the hour mark, I was thinking they were going to get absolutely blown away. It was going to be a dreadful end to their year. They had the guts. They had that, I suppose, traditional Aussie spirit to be able to fight back and win this game. And I think there are green shoots for Australia, despite a year where if you look at their record, it still hasn't been great. They weren't that great in the Rugby Championship. They lost their series against England in an autumn. They've lost to Italy. They've had some narrow defeats in terms of that one against France, which they could have easily won at the Stade de France. But I just still feel like there's something about Australia that, whilst there are major issues in the game in Australia in terms of the interest in it falling behind other sports like Aussie rules and cricket and everything else, there's still these green shoots for them. The likes of, I really hope I say his name correct, but the man of the match, Mark Nwanga Nitawasi, hopefully I've said that right, Fijian heritage, who scored 2 tries, looked really dangerous. They've had a lot of these guys come into the squad, and I think they've been impressive. Jock Campbell was another one who came in against France at the Stade de France and looked good. So once they get all those guys back who are injured, I just wonder how good this Wallabies team could be. I think they have a long way to go. We're at a period in time where they are a little bit behind some of the other top nations. But if they're able to keep players fit, if they're able to have more consistency in their selection, what could they do at the World Cup next year? Sitting here right now, I think they would be overachieving if they got to a semi-final. But I think that has the possibility to change if we do see those players come back, have more game time together. I don't know. I think there are reasons for Australia to be positive in what has overall been a pretty tough year for them. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's kind of my general thoughts on the game, on Wayne Pivac and so on and so forth. A fascinating match. One of the best matches of the autumn, no question about it. Hell of a lot better than the dross that I witnessed at Twickenham with a really poor England performance. So drop a comment down below, let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also like the video. It massively helps that algorithm. We've had some videos on the channel that have done really, really well recently. So all the support, all the comments, everything, I do really, really appreciate it. All right, I think that's enough from me. I'll see you in the next one.